All right. Welcome back to the Sexy Biz Babe podcast. I'm going to get into it. So we're getting into fuckboys, friends with benefits, breakups, play parties. And if you've been following me for a while, you know I'm going through a breakup, and it's in a really small, intimate community, lifestyle community. And oh boy, there is some highs and lows and interesting things that I wouldn't have expected. So we're going to get into it. We're going to spill the tea, talk about things, get real, and then stay to the end. We have some fun, naughty stories that we just experienced recently with some fun play parties and events. So stay tuned. And I have my special guest on, Vanessa Duffy. Go ahead and introduce yourself to my audience.
Hey guys, Sexy Biz Babe fans. I'm Vanessa Duffy, or the Frisky Flirt. I'm recently out in being lifestyle and public about that side of the world. So if you're interested in following my journey, lessons that I've learned, similar to how Tia's learned them, another resource in the community, because the more we talk about it, the more everyone feels comfortable. And I love getting curiosity into confidence and lifestyle. So
yes. So check her out, the Frisky Flirt on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go check her out. She's got some great stuff. And what do you do? So I know you work with Lovely Fate and Kinky Comedy show, which we both work with. And yeah, I'd love to hear, how did you get involved with that?
Well, for each of them, so I've been in lifestyle for 8 years, and for the partners with Lovely Fate, I've actually known them for 7 years, and so I've known them for a long time. Gone to their parties when it was a small place at their house, when they had like a downtown dungeon, and then when they've brought it to their new location where it's at now. And so I've been following them for a long time, and last year I sort of had this commitment and desire to be more my authentic self, and that involved lifestyle. Is such an integral part of my life, you know, coming out of a monogamous relationship and those challenges. I was like, no, this is a part of me and I really want to embrace it. And so I chose to work with clients who are more in alignment with that sort of vision. And so Lovely Fate was one of those people who had asked me for marketing support, and then it kind of spread from there, you know, helped them facilitate the Playboy article, revamp their website, fixed all the materials, and we're just like growing at an amazing rate. And I absolutely love being a part of that.
Yes. Okay. So for people who don't know, Lovely Fate is a play party. How would you describe it? I've been, it's fun.
Yeah. It is a sex positive club here in LA, once monthly. And then we have a lot of one-off events as well. So it's a really wonderful entry point for people who are curious about lifestyle. Because I like to describe it as more of like a lifestyle social, you know, so it's like there is play involved, but there's a lot of activations, a lot of connections. We have this setup called Kinky Connections too, where people feel more comfortable with each other. There's like a lock and key game for people to get used to it, post to orientation to meet other people. So it's a really great icebreaker in a non-stressful way for people to experience the atmosphere. Like they have music, like you've been. Like how would you describe the experience?
Yeah, I love that it's great for beginners. I would definitely say that. And I feel like, Vanessa, flowers to you. I feel like you've really transformed it to be a little more lively and inclusive and activated. So I've watched it grow and develop. So I would just say she's really amped it up and added more spice and like really sexy performances and made a really safe space. And there's now, I don't know if they did this before, but there's a orientation, right?
They've always had that. Yeah. Okay. I definitely can't take credit for the performances. So Zila Vex is the one who does that, but they are absolutely incredible. And it's just been getting better and better, which I absolutely love. I would say I'm in charge of getting the curious people in and getting that word out. And so I love that, doing that legwork once it's already there. Like we have an amazing team who does the themes, the productions, the performances, that like everyone who gets invited has an incredible experience because of the work that they're doing. So I'm just like adding to that because it's such a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And it is like 40, 50% new people almost every single time, which is my kink. It's like, I love meeting new people, and I'm just like entering into this world. I'm like, ooh, what do you like? What are you curious about? Who do you want to? And then I love plugging people together and introducing them. So that's a kink of mine that I really enjoy. And orientation is a huge part of that. First time you go through orientation, somebody new, go through orientation just to understand the rules of engagement and how to communicate and go about that in a safe way.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Well, I've just really watched it transform, and I think it is the people that are curated, and that makes the party, along with all the good things like the performances and the orientation, all the things that they had. But as you get more people, it's just going to be better.
Yeah.
Hotter people, nice people who are open and ready to try things. Maybe not just couples, because I don't really care for those parties that it's just couples. So it's nice to have a mix.
Yeah. We got a lot of singles. We got a lot of queer folks. Yeah. And it's like we're introducing a few new systems too, where it's like rainbow wristbands for people who are open to queer sort of play and engagement. Because I know that's been a topic of conversation that has come up in the surveys a lot, where they're just like, we're not quite sure how to approach it. And this is like a very open-minded space. And so I love being a part of that activation and like the STI testing as well, so that people have wristbands for that. So it starts to help people feel more comfortable communicating. So at least like an identifying pinpoint, you're just like, oh, okay, like what kind of queer play are you interested in? Or, oh, I see you've been tested. Like you feel more safe in that sense to play. And so I love bringing about change for conversations in that, because we do that a lot in the personal like play parties that we do, or one-offs and things like that too, you know?
Yeah, I love the rainbow wristband. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. What ladies have a struggle to being like, who's open? Is she just straight and being kind to me and giving me compliments? Or is she interested? And it's like, like I wish back in time, like I want some rainbow wristbands, because then I'd be like, oh, okay, this is a more open, like I know it's more of a green light, or at least like closer, so I can build that up, ask her questions a little easier versus getting rejected by all the straight women.
Happens to me all the time in real life. I'm like, no, I'm not just being nice. I'm like, oh, even me, and I'm a pretty confident person. So it's just hard. So like in play party spaces, I am a little bit more confident, but it's nice to have that identifier, because I know even though I'm comfortable like asking questions, sometimes they can be a bit nervous in their responses. So I think that's a great identifier. Or if I'm just like walking around with my strap-on dick, you know what I mean? And then they're just like, okay, yeah, 100%. Like that's my rainbow flag as well.
That helps, yeah. And then you could even get a strap-on that's rainbow.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, that's awesome. I would love to see that. It would just help me, because I went into that last play party and I was actually like, I want to play with women, but it just didn't happen because it is a little hetero focused, and it would be nice to see a little more gay play, bi play, and not for the male gaze, but for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, at first glance, it seems like it's very hetero, but the more we talk about it and the more people that I personally know are bisexual and lean different ways, it's like, okay, like, why isn't that a part of the conversation? What can we do to sort of enhance that?
Yeah. What can we do to enhance that?
Like you and I know, like I could tell when you're being flirty, when you're friendly and flirty, but that's because I know you so well. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I don't think other people know. Yeah. But okay.
Like, okay, talk to you later.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I would love if you shared, it doesn't have to be recently, but what's one of your fun experiences through Lovely Fate that you just really enjoyed? Like a story or something you learned or took away with?
Oh my God, I have so many. I have witnessed so many fun parts in the playrooms. Like I think at the last event, I saw like the sexiest human centipede happening.
Okay, please really describe. Fun. Yes.
So it was a wonderful couple, and it was a guy playing with a girl, and then there was a girl with a strap on playing with her from behind, and then a guy fucking her from behind. And so it was like,
oh my God. Okay, wait, let's go. Okay. Somebody.
4 people involved.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So it was boy, girl, boy, except the girl had a strap on. So she was fucking
a guy.
She was fucking the girl, and the guy was fucking the girl with the strap on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to draw something. Yeah.
But I love seeing kind of like fun engagements where it turns into group play. Ooh, you know what I mean? So I think that's really fun. And then from like a story that happened a few months ago, I think this was back in maybe August, September, I had every now and then I'll like pop into early like orientation and just see how people heard about it, how are they feeling, what are their intentions, as much as I can, you know, sort of before the night goes wild. And there was this woman who was by herself who I had met there, and she seemed a little nervous. I was like, making her feel comfortable. She started getting excited. She was telling me how she had heard about Lovely Fate for such a long time and then finally pulled the plug, which tends to be the case. People usually think about it, and then one day they're like, fuck it, I want to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had seen her a couple times throughout the night, socializing with people, and I integrated her with a few people. And then at the very next event, she had curly hair the first time, and then she had straightened hair the second time. But I still recognized her. And so I remember she approached me and she's like, hey, she had a problem with her. She was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. And I like called out her name and I was like, oh yeah. I was like, we met last month. And you could see her light up with excitement that people and like the people who work there actually care about you know, the guests. And so she was stoked that I remember her. She was like, I had such a great time. I brought a friend. And that's how so much of this goes. It's like word of mouth, your experience. If you have a great time and you're shown a great experience, you want to share it with other people. And I think that's how we help break down these stigmas about like, it's taboo to be kinky or anything. It's like, no, you realize these are fun, friendly, normal, amazing people. And you're just there to have a good time without judgment.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. What is one of your biggest tips going into a play party?
Communication. I would say. And I think even if you're single, I think intention is a big thing too. Just seeing where your energy is at. What am I feeling? Are we wanting to play with a couple? What do the rules of engagement sort of look like from there? And particularly with couples, because I know that these are the people who reach out to me most with asking for tips. And I think the biggest one that they have told me has been most effective for them, that I communicate to everybody, are physical and like nonverbal cues. And so we say, hey, if you feel something, say something, as a couple. But sometimes if you're in the middle of a circle and you're feeling a certain type of way and it's not a complete deal breaker, you don't want to say like, hey, I'm feeling, uncomfortable. Let's go over here, because it might put you on the spot or something like that. And so I usually recommend to people, I'm like, find a place in the body where you can touch your partner. And then you guys have a plan of action ahead of time for what that looks like. So if you're feeling a little nervous or you're a little overwhelmed and you want some time without breaking the middle of a conversation, do a tap like on an elbow or on a place on your knee or somewhere where it's a bit more subtle, where your partner knows, just to like slowly wrap it up and be like, hey, we're going to go get water. Or, hey, we're going to go I'm going to go check that out and
talk.
Reconnect.
It's kind of like a safe word.
Exactly.
But a touch.
Yeah, an unspoken safe word. And I feel like that's something that a lot of couples have told me that they've been using that's been really helpful and doesn't put them on the spot.
Yeah. And what about for you? Like when you go to play parties, what's something that you practice to go in feeling sexy, confident, and get your intentions? It's so good that you asked that, because I only started recently trying to do better at that. So I feel like oftentimes I'm in host mode regardless of the party. I just have that kind of mindset. And so it's very difficult for me to relax and let go and be in a headspace for play. And so what I've been doing now, it's difficult for me to sort of switch that mindset. It's like, I'll go in with the intention. I'm like, okay, see if you feel comfortable playing with at least one person. And oftentimes, like, I'll look at the guest list and I'll have in my mind, I'll be like, okay, I think maybe a handful of these people, and I'll reach out to them. Because people used to do this to me for big parties, where they'll reach out to me. They're like, hey, if you're open to playing, and I was like, I don't know if I thought that much of it. I was like, oh, that's really nice that they took that extra step. And if it happens, it happens. But I realize now, even as a social butterfly, it's difficult for me to bridge that gap. And especially for people who I know or may have already played with at one point. And I almost end up in a bit of a friend zone. Like, do you have that? Do you have like sometimes where you've played with somebody for a while and like you don't know, okay, are we going to play now? Are we socializing? Like, it gets kind of interesting and weird, right? It is interesting. I was going to share something about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'll do now is I'll reach out and just be like, hey, like, I'm actually feeling like I'm down to play. Like, and I'll give them permission. I'm like, hey, you have permission throughout like the night if you want to come and just make out with me. And that happened at a recent party, which was helpful for me. I was like, no, okay. So when I see that person or I see the people that I had talked to ahead of time, I'm like, okay, like it kind of gives me like a sexy, like turned on kind of feeling. I'm like, ooh, at any moment, like maybe we'll have the opportunity to do that. And then they will. And so it's really helped me go into a bit more of a sexy mindset instead of just in
and then work mode. What do you do if you kind of talk to people and you like get the okay, get the yes, and it doesn't flow? And that's one thing that I was going to share is like sometimes it just doesn't flow and you got to kind of let it go.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then also, I would love to hear your thoughts. It just sometimes doesn't flow is my thought.
It happens all the time. All the time, and whether it was people reaching out to me and it's just like, hey, like if you bring the strap out, we'd love to be in line. Yeah. And then sometimes you don't, this sounds so weird. Like sometimes you just don't get to everybody. You know what I mean? Like you have a net of, you're just like, oh yeah, this would be great. This would be fun. And like, it doesn't always happen, but something that I do post-party is I message every single person who I did play with. And I'm just like, hey, I had a wonderful time, especially if it's couples. If it's a couple and I played with either the girl or the guy, obviously like before that happened, I, get the okay and make sure that they're on the same page. But I'll message them in a group text afterwards. And I'm just like, hey, thank you so much for like letting me play. Like I had a wonderful experience. Like, did you guys have a great time? And just hearing more about their night so they feel comfortable in that like post conversation.
Yeah.
But I'll also do that for people who I might have communicated I wanted to, but didn't get to.
Ooh, I think that's a
nice
good tip. And I think that's great. People should make note. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay. So that gets me into, I'm going to share first of all, one of my tips that kind of go into it. My biggest play party tip is to go in with no expectation. No expectation to play, no expectation of what you need or like just have to get from maybe someone specific. But I want you to go in with an intention. There's differences. So an expectation is like, oh, I need this to be happy. No, let it go. And then find out what would make you so thrilled. So I have like two intentions. It's like one that's low, that no matter what, you know what's going to happen and you're going to leave happy. And then you have like this dream big, fuck yes, I'm excited, I'm fucking wet. That's your like go big or go home, like super happy one. So either way, you leave happy. So one of this last one, my fuck yes one was just to play and meet new people. And honestly, I didn't have too much expectations. But then my lower one was like, yeah, just meet people, have fun, enjoy the experience, talk to people. And so either way, I was happy. But some amazing things can happen when you have those big intentions.
Tell us.
Okay, so one of them was I went to a play party over Malibu Beach. Ooh. And I had a very specific intention that I was excited about, but I also was like, it may not happen. But my fuck yes one was I want to get fucked over the balcony, overlooking the ocean at this Malibu mansion. Oh. And I was like, I didn't have a specific person like that had to happen, but I did have one in mind.
Yeah.
So I told my audience on my stories because I was just like excited, no expectations. So get this. It happened with the person I wanted to because he knew my desire and he made sure to help make it happen. And then get this, it's happening and I'm like manifesting and like thinking of abundance. And we look to the side and there's fire performers.
Oh my gosh. It was just like added to your woman-festing vision. I love that.
So that's where it could go amazing.
Yeah.
But I didn't have expectations still. It was an exciting thing that it came out because I shared my desire openly. And people do want to sometimes help your desires come true.
That's my king too. I love being like, what are your intentions? What are like, is there anything that you want to do on your Slucket list? Like your bucket list, but for slut, like your Slucket list. I'm like, what have you not done? And then like so much of this community, they're like, I know just the person. Yeah. And we just all love making each other's dreams come true. It's like absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Even one that I recently went to, I shared like, ooh, I just like to be spanked. Like that's all I want at this party. And so multiple people, and I was like, just ask, like, I want it. And so I had like 4 people ask me, can I spank you? And I was like, Each time I was like leaving away smiling.
Yes, please, less peas.
Yeah. And it was like an easy ask. So that's my biggest tip and differentiating between the two. So, okay. One thing that I'm noticing is going through a breakup right now in the community. I remember when me and my partner were just really doing well. Yeah. I would go to parties and I was more of a slut. And I heard you talk about this and I really want to talk about it.
Okay.
Because it's so confusing because you think you're like, oh, I'm so single. Like I'm going to go have sex with 3 people. I'm going to, whatever the desire is. But what I'm noticing is I'm single now and it's harder for me. And like when I was most feeling safe with my partner is when I was the sluttiest. And I like had multiple partners and I went home and then I went home to my partner and cuddled and felt great. So I want to hear your perspective. Like, I bet a lot of people don't get this.
Yeah. And I think I've had a lot of people reach out to me since that sort of published. And they're just like, that is so, so interesting. And you were one of them too. Although I do want to ask you, why do you have theories as to why it's hard for you? Do you think it's like from your end, or is it from other people's end, or so, what do you sort of have in mind?
I love the questions. So I find that when I had a partner, I felt safe, secure. I'm going to get my needs met. My needs met of that connection, my needs met of safety. I also am going to go home and have aftercare and connection and cuddles. And then when I'm single, I'm going there and it's almost like they're taking something from me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I've worked on this a lot, but I do like aftercare. I really like the cuddles and the connection, and it takes me a little bit more to warm up because I want to have like banter or flirting and stimulation, emotional connection.
Yeah.
So that's for me. What about you?
Similar to a degree. I don't know if I go into it thinking I'm taking something from people or that they're taking something from me. I think it's a combination of going into it knowing that, you know, when I was in a partnership fully in alignment, I think because my relationship sort of cubby was being filled, you know, complications aside, like I had my person in my mind. And so I was allowed to be free in just a playful, fun sense. And that was genuinely the feeling versus single. I know I'm not in a place, or I don't have much desire to be in a relationship. And so theoretically, I thought that would make it easier. You know what I mean? You're going into these play settings and it might not be stressful for other people. But I think from a double end, right? I think myself, I get nervous with some singles where it's difficult to find partners who are single in lifestyle where you kind of journey into it together. And so I worry that sometimes they might get the wrong idea. And so I do a better job now, or I try to, of having those conversations ahead of time where I'm just like, hey, let's play. And, you know, for the ones who are just like, hey, are you down to hang afterwards or this and that? You know, I'll be honest, you know, I'll be like, hey, had a wonderful time with you. I think you're a great person. I don't really have much bandwidth right now unless it's like a true friends with benefits situation. Because I do like the connection. So it's just like we go on a date, we go to the bar, grab a quick bite, and then we can play. Yeah. And if they're in full alignment with that, great. But I get nervous and apprehensive where I don't want to mislead them if they're looking for their person and I'm not. Yeah. And then from the other end, I have noticed that it's been a different energy sometimes with couples where even couples who I kind of knew a little bit before are a little bit more distant. Not too many of them, but I noticed that they have been a little bit more dodgy or not as conversational. And part of me wonders if that's is a single woman maybe a little bit less threatening? Was I less threatening in a partnership? Which I think absolutely makes sense. You know what I mean? And I'm working on that now where I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I open up the conversations with people who I think maybe it feels like there's a misalignment? Yeah. If it was somebody who I used to engage with before. Yeah. And this has come up pretty recently where I've had two separate instances where people have communicated like, oh yeah, you're a bit of an anomaly or you're a bit of like a unique case in the relationship. And I was like, that's so interesting. I'd love to know why. Like if they're open to it, I would love to have that conversation and figure out how do we bridge that gap, because I am so a proponent of communication if they want to. I never want to be a wedge in anybody's relationship. I just want to add fun to it, whether it is or not. And if it's a no, if it's something that I'm doing, I'd love to know how to do better on my end. Or if it's them, I'm just like, okay, I'll be absolutely respectful. What are the new boundaries, even as friendships in the space? So it's a completely new layer very recently that I've been exploring and trying to figure out how to manage. Yeah, it's so complex. That's the thing about being in lifestyle in the community. It's very complex. There's a lot of emotions. I would say each play party kind of brings something up for me. Do you agree? Like I just get like something that's different or unique or brings up a trigger or brings up a desire, or like you just kind of like, it's like a playground, but you're learning. Yeah, it 1000% is. And I'm so glad that you said that, because I do think it's true, because it can be so different across the board. Like I can be in a completely great place with one person. And even as in a partnership, right? Where it's like, I think when you're in a couple in lifestyle, there's a lot more involved. And, it's like, you're not just managing just your feelings and their feelings. It's your feelings, your partner's feelings, your relationship, their relationship. So there's a lot of variables. And I think that's completely normal. But I will say that I think I completely forgot the question. What was the question?
Oh, I was just saying that we learn. It's like we're learning at these play parties.
Oh,
like, it teaches us lessons or desires.
Yeah, let me start that part over again. And so in a partnership going through all of that, I think sometimes I would experience like another couple or a person where I felt completely fine. And then depending on what me and my partner were going through at the very next party, it could be completely different. So it can be wildly inconsistent. And I've been noticing that as well as a single person. But I think I have a lot more empathy and understanding because I experienced that in a partnership where as a single, if I witness that in other couples, I try to be extra mindful where if it feels like something a bit's off, I'm just like, oh, like I won't engage as much. Where if like if they invite me to play, but I genuinely don't feel like they're in a great place, I'm like, for me, lifestyle is so much more about the friendships and community than the play. Like we can play, you can call anybody on your phone right now. They're gonna be like, yes, Tia, I'm down. You know what I mean? But so it's like, I would rather make sure everyone's in a good place before doing anything sexual that might put me in an unfortunate position in a point of contention with whatever they were going through in that moment.
Yeah. Okay. I agree completely. Yeah. And that leads me into my next questions about like friends with benefits, fuck boys. So friends with benefits. I'm recently single. Yeah. So it's like I'm getting back into it. And I also teach on feminine and masculine energy a lot. And I'm like battling myself right now. I'm like, oh, I just want like a friends with benefits that I want to maybe fuck here and like actually have friends, like you said, where you maybe go on a date or you hang out. And then I'm at this point where I'm like, I don't always want to be reaching out, but then I know I should advocate for myself and it's not a big deal. So I'm battling with that. This is just being honest and vulnerable. Like, I like to be chased. I like to be desired, but then also, I also want what I want, and I know I'm an empowered woman. Anyways, I'd love your tips on that.
I agree.
Like, do you just reach out?
Yes.
And then just like keep that compartmentalized, even though you're like, well, why aren't they reaching out? Like, what?
With people in the community, you mean? With friends with benefits?
Like people that you've hooked up with. And I talked about this with one of my friends, and we're like, but we want them to reach out to us. Yes. But then we're the one that, it's this battle of.
I 100% agree with that. But I am also like a dominant leaning switch. So it's like, I'm sort of in a women mode right now. Yeah. So like, I do tend to be the one to do outreach. And so, but I agree. Like, and I'll say the sentiment that I get from women who I reach out to, they're just like, oh, like they get smitten, they get excited. They're just like, oh, cause like, I'll pick a day, I'll pick the plan. I'll plan it all out. And I'm just like, I know what I would want from if I went in a male perspective, because I do tend to like the men who, either are more of the planners, which is like my love language, or really subby boys. You know what I mean? It's just like, if you're in between, then I'm just like, I don't have a lot of time for that. Like, I need you to be assertive and sort of take the plans on that. But
or even tell them then, exactly. Hey, I would like to play again. And so can you let me know when you would like to play again?
That's what I'm getting at, right? And it's interesting because like I think that's something that can be communicated either. Maybe not necessarily during the party, because a few things have come up recently where I think it's been challenging. Where my initial instinct was to say, if you're vibing with somebody new at a party, and you're exchanging information, just sort of drop it in there and be like, oh, would love to connect with you at some point. However, I have learned from a couple instances, not through me, but through other people, where there's a time and a place for that. And I agree. Like if somebody asked me that while we were in the middle of playing or before we play, I would feel apprehensive if that was, especially for me personally, where I don't have much desire for one-on-ones right now outside of women. I know there's a double standard, and so that would make me feel uncomfortable and nervous if I was just like, oh, if they asked me beforehand and I'd just be like, oh, like I don't like lying. I'd be like, oh, I'm not in that place. And maybe they'd be okay with it, or maybe they'd feel a certain type of way. I feel like maybe that's more of an end of the night kind of conversation when you're exchanging information. Or if you were playing, and then sort of what I tend to do where I message them afterwards, be like, hey, I had a great time. Thank you so much. I think what could happen from the women's end or whoever wants to not be the aggressor can say like, I'd love to hang out with you, during, when you say during the week or just like outside of play parties to connect as like a friends with benefits if you're open to it. You know what I mean? That way you express your interest. You're not asking plans. You're not planning like it to some degree. You're giving the opening and allowing them to respond hopefully with what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Coming back to you and saying like, hey, yeah, of course, that'd be great. Like, do you want to grab drinks? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And it goes from there. So it's a bit of a balance there.
Yeah. So with fuckboys, and we're in the community and lifestyle where we're fucking all the time.
Yeah.
Are there fuckboys? Are there, like, how do you identify a fuckboy when we're all kind of like fuckboys and fuckgirls?
Well, how do you identify a fuckboy? Because I personally don't know any fuckboys in the community, at least not our immediate community. So I'm curious, what is your lots of fuckboys in vanilla life and fuckgirls? Yeah. How would you describe a fuckboy?
I would say where they're not open and honest about it, where they're just kind of like doing it and maybe leading you on in some way.
Yeah.
And then playing with your mind and manipulating you. I feel like that's kind of the fuckboy, instead of just going in and being like, hey, I'm not wanting this. I'm not like wanting a relationship. I'm looking for friends with benefits. I'm looking for, hey, let's hang out once a month. Let's hang out twice a month and things like that. So I think that's the big differentiator.
I would agree with that. Do you think you've experienced that in this community? Or the
Not so much. I would say outside of the community.
Yes.
And that's why it's interesting to be in the community, is because there isn't as much lying and manipulation. You can just be honest. And that's why it goes back to your communication. And so how do you prevent, I don't know, falling for a friends with benefits?
Well, I wouldn't, I don't think, right? Yeah. And I know that sounds so aggressive, but I just, and I do communicate that ahead of time where it's like, I think with the way that you describe it, one of my concerns is being a fuck girl.
Okay.
Because like, I feel like if people don't actually pay attention to what I'm communicating, sometimes people want what they want and they hear what they want to hear.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm just like, hey, I don't have a ton of bandwidth, but I like connecting with you. Like, and for me personally, if I like you, I'll hang out with you once, maybe twice a month. But right now it's just sort of like at an event, you know what I mean? And so I think what maybe somebody who might be taking specific pieces of information, they'll be like, all I heard was she likes me, she's down to hang out, you know? And I've had this happen a couple of times where, you know, they'll message me, and even hearing my bandwidth and the sort of once or twice per week once or twice maybe per month, will message me a bit more consistently, or they'll just be like, hey, are you free to do this day? Hey, are you free this day? Hey, are you free this day? And then I start to feel a bit nervous because I'm just like, shit, like, is it they're just trying to figure out an availability, in which case I'll try to meet them in the middle, and it's usually not something that makes them very happy. I'm like, how about 2 weeks from now? And they're like, well, you don't have, you know, and so I feel bad. And so I've gotten to the point where like now I'm just pretty direct, where I'm just like, hey, I don't do one-on-ones, because I've had too much of that happen, where if they're picking their information, they could easily be like, oh, well, Vanessa's like leading me on or put like, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I just communicate ahead of time. You're understandably pushing for more time that I don't have, and I don't want to lead you into disappointment. So why don't we just see each other at events?
Yeah, I agree. And this is where it comes in, where actions and words need to align.
Yeah. Not
just actions speak louder than words, but what you're saying and what you're doing needs to align. So I like that you have your boundaries, and then you're keeping them. You're keeping them at 1 or 2 times a month. Yeah. Where I think what goes wrong sometimes is that people say, oh, I don't want a relationship, but then they fully act like they want a relationship, as in they're hanging out 3 to 5 times a week.
God,
they're going to parties together. They're having deep talks. They're inviting you to dates multiple times a week. That's where your actions and words don't align. You're acting like the boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, but you're saying that you don't want it.
Yeah. And I think so much of this has to do with really understanding yourself and knowing where you're at. Because I have a very, very good friend where she tends to fall in this pattern where she mentally wants to be casual, but has a deep desire for having a connection. And so I actually know two people like this, where they develop a lot of micro crushes. And it sort of creates this story in your head where you get excited or you think about a relationship thing, but you entered it in a space and it communicated it in a way where it was casual. Afterwards, you start to want more, and then you get disappointed when it isn't that.
Yeah.
So, but I also know that sometimes it can make you feel nervous if you are talking to somebody in a typically casual setting. You're like, hey, I'm actually looking for someone, for my person at some point.
Yeah.
I think people are worried that might seem too heavy and too aggressive, because that tends to happen in the monogamous world, right? Where you go on a date and it's like having a conversation about your intentions within the first couple of dates. It's just like, whoa, let's get to know each other first. And it's like, no, well, I don't want to waste my time if that's not in alignment.
Yeah, that's how I am.
Yeah, like if you match with somebody, or at least where I'm at, if I match with somebody and they're looking for something serious, I'm just like, oh, like, actually, like, I don't want to waste your time. I'm not looking for that. And I used to think that there was an in-between. I used to say, if you want to casually hang out in between that period of time, and then sure. And I realized that was unintentionally selfish, right? Where I was just like, okay, cool, we can hang out. Because I thought, until you find your person. But then I realized they'll create that attachment and then try to change you. And I'm like, oh, I'm just not going to engage with that whatsoever.
Okay, so talking about this, that's where I'm at. I'm not ready to have a relationship right now. In fact, I am scarred from breaking up. Like,
takes time to heal, baby.
I'm like, oh, I don't want a relationship, but I want one.
Yeah.
Like,
eventually,
it has to be that person. And note to myself, breakups suck. Don't get in them unless it's like what I'm really looking for, because I forgot how hard it is. But I want to have some partnership connections, maybe friends with benefits. In the meantime, I don't want to be a fucking nun.
Yeah.
So I want, for example, I have a guy that I enjoy his company. I like to have sex with. I do not see a relationship with it at all. So for that type of person, even though you just said that, I would like to hang out with him and be casual. But then you're like, oh, but then they want a relationship, so you're off limits for them.
Depends if they're single or not. And I think also for you, first off, let me fight you on one thing for the viewers. I wouldn't say don't go into a relationship unless you know 100% that's your person, because I have done that 3 different times in my life that it took up a decade of my life, where I fully thought that was it. No, fully thought that was it. No.
Yeah.
So but I have learned so much from every single one of them. I know you're in the throes of it now. And at least for me, I don't know if this is your experience, so much of the healing was forgiving myself for abandoning myself consistently.
Ooh.
And not enforcing boundaries. It's one thing to communicate boundaries and eventually finding the strength to do that. The stronger thing for me was enforcing them. When they do keep crossing that boundary, it is your responsibility to leave.
Yes.
And so I think, just to say, get into relationships where you think that there's an alignment. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Hopefully you recognize those patterns ahead of time and you cut it off early.
Yes, I do agree. All of my relationships, I've learned a ton. I have grown so much. I feel like my past partnerships made me a better woman, helped me become a better person and a better partner and a better wife, partner, mother in the future. Yeah. So I'm not going to lie. I do not regret my partnerships. Yeah. I'm just to a point where I'm like, okay, I need to be a little more specific and not go into things when a part of me knows it's not going to last.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if it's not going to last, but I will say that what I've seen from you specifically that has, and I want to give you your flowers as well, is I have seen you communicate your feelings in a constructive way. Going through this, I think when I first met you, and it was a couple of years ago, right? I felt like I could see feelings happening and I felt the mask. And I think I was able to see that because I used to be that way. And I think so many people going into this think have to be perfect, have to ball no, don't do that. Just do what you need to do, take a time out, take a step, whatever it is. And to where I've seen you now, even just this most recent event, you're like, I'm not feeling 100%. And you volunteer this information. You're like, I'm not feeling 100%, but I'm in a good mood and I'm just kind of going to be open to whatever happens. And even saying that and thinking that out loud was just a really incredible thing to witness, knowing what you're going through, knowing how fucking hard it is, and then just continuing to try to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot better than you think you are.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, being vulnerable. Even on the podcast, sometimes I'm like trying to be perfect and like not share the things. But like some of these questions I want to know, like the friends with benefits, I'm like scrambling. I'm like fighting my brain of like, what should I do? What should I not do? What's right and wrong? And like the friends with benefits, it's like, I want to put my energy and I want those things. What's okay, what's not, like reaching out to them. Okay. So a good example of this is like having a friends with benefits and then you go to play parties and then sometimes it doesn't line up. And I get that.
Yeah.
Like I totally get going with the flow, going with the energy. And sometimes it just doesn't match. And they could have said yes ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't float. And I totally get it. A friend recently at this last one, I was like, I got 4 yeses ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't flowing, but I realized I went up to my friend and I was like, what do you do? And she was like, just go up to them and be like, I'm ready to play.
Exactly.
And so I did that and it happened to be one of them that I've, you know, a lot of them I've already connected with because I prefer that. And so I'm just like, hey, I'm ready when you are. And she helped me out. And then it was good.
Yeah.
So
it's perfect.
I will say like as a woman, especially in the play party environment, and all the stimulation, I do think it's empowered to take the initiative. And I've had this happen over and over, talking to other women, just being like, oh yeah, I'd love to play with you today. Oh yeah, I'm ready, because there's so much going on and so much stimulation that it is empowering. But then also wanting to be chased. So
exactly. And I think that balance is so important. And I love the empowerment component. You know, I think there's a balance of finding the chase and being empowered to sort of be like, okay, I'm ready, talking ahead of time.
Yeah.
I will say on behalf of men, because I have a lot of close friends in this community who have been vulnerable and sort of expressed some of their concerns of why they aren't a bit more assertive. And I think it's completely valid. Like a man being assertive in this space, especially as a single, if they're asking if you want to play or maybe pushing things too far with the person who maybe might be as comfortable, it can be perceived as too pushy. It is a lot more stressful for men to think they're crossing a line than I think it might be for women.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, men, I would hope that you work on this as well, where it's like the conversation ahead of time. I think if people we really got to start this trend, even on like the partifuls or these events, and just being like, here's kind of what I'm into, or here's what I'm hoping for, or talking to these people separately and make each other's dreams come true and stuff like that. But like men start to feel more comfortable with people who you've already pre-negotiated with and understand like, what does that look like? What are they okay with? And if it's like towards the beginning of the night, end of the night, or anytime during the night, you know what I mean? And then women, just be honest in like what you're wanting ahead of time, and then kind of pre-negotiate. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Maybe you could do it for the next party. Be like, hey, would have been, you know, we didn't get to do it this time, but maybe at this next party, you know, because sometimes you're craving different things at different times. And
exactly. Yeah. And sometimes it's just not the right energy at the same time. I've noticed. Yeah. It's like they're done, but now you're talking to someone else, and then you're done and then they're talking to someone else. So in the past, I had a conversation with someone I was dating though. And I was like, hey, like, let's try to maybe wait a second instead of just going to the next person or going to do something. Like, wait for a minute and be like, hey, let me know when you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
So like a little sign, and that helped when I was dating someone, because there was more of a expectation or a desire. It's a little bit different when you're just kind of like free for all. And
I'm really glad that you said that, because it is true. I think pre-negotiating for couples as well, where it's just like, okay, I know some couples where they like to be the ones to kick it off themselves. So they're like, okay, you're free to play with whoever you want, but I want to be the one to play with you first. And then a lot of people, something that I like too, that like my previous partner had sort of like turned me on to and I really enjoyed, was like reclamation sex. Like having that's my aftercare for me, right? Because I'm not a big cuddle person or anything like that. And so it's just like debriefing, talking about the night, getting all the details and having that excitement, and then like getting turned on and then playing together afterwards kind of like helps seal that deal. That at least it was for him. And that really became something for me. Ooh. But I think that's something that could be integrated in parties too. Like for me and my ex in the space, we were so like all over I was just like, I love that like occasionally there'd be check-ins. Like he loved when I would like refill his water bottle and give it to him or throughout the night, and he'd check in on me, or he'd like recognize my moans and then like come up to me and he's like, yeah, I get it, girl. Yeah. But for some couples, especially early on, I think pre-negotiating what you think that would look like. Is it like after one couple reconnect, water break, water break, and then just like not phoning home. What is it called? Where it's just like you reconnect with like the center base, you know what I mean? And then go back so that you don't feel forgotten or neglected or anything like that. So I think that's really important that you said that. Each couple might be completely different.
Yeah, and everybody's different. For sure. All right, so back to breakups. How are breakups in the non-monogamy world versus the monogamy world different? Have you found?
They are different, but similar in some ways. Similar in the sense where the friend groups are kind of also experiencing the breakup. And it's like, okay, how do we juggle the divorce? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who do we invite to what? Because, I think monogamy and non-monogamy, it's hard for them to see each other so soon. And so the friends are sort of like, do I invite both? And they decide. If you happen to be closer with one, will that other person be upset? So I think there's a lot of like that navigation that happens. And I think that has an added layer of difficulty in lifestyle because we're intimate with each other.
And because when you're monogamous, in my experience, I don't know anybody that has this tight-knit of a community. It's not, it's like, oh, all of my previous, and please, audience, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my experience, all of my breakups with my past relationships in a monogamous relationship, we stop seeing each other. Maybe we fuck a bit. My friends do not talk to them. My friends do not fuck them. Otherwise, we're not friends anymore. And we have this like split. And then sometimes there's like some breakup sex. And then you eventually split. But like, yeah, we don't communicate to exes. And so I've been like, this is the hardest breakup for me, is like being in a community that I've grown to love after 2.5 years of getting to know them. And I was like, oh, I have my own community. And then really meshing with it. And then feeling like, oh, I feel like I've been losing a lot of friends. And so it's sad because I know that they love both of us, but like, it's so different. Like, it's different. And it's funny because when you go in this lifestyle, I talk to people and I'm like, yeah, they used to fuck all your friends and it was fine and you would see it. But now that we're broken up and we don't get to, it hurts differently.
It does. And I just want to say, I don't think you're losing friends, but I do know what that feels like, because that's what I felt through the breakup, where I think what happens in post-breakup is like, which of your friends were ride or dies and which ones were fair weather friends, like which ones were roots, which ones were branches. And I think they each have a place in our life, but there's honestly nothing quite like a breakup to really recognize that. And so you're also going through a bit of like a friendship healing as well.
Yeah, I feel like I'm losing friends, or they're not as close as I thought. I had best friends and now they're not my best friends anymore.
Yeah, exactly. When things are copacetic, everyone feels like your absolute best friend. And I think I remember that being particularly devastating for me because we were the first major breakup to happen in this lifestyle. Ooh. And so, and I think it was probably one of the more impactful ones from the friend group as well, because everyone was just like, what do we do? And I remember hearing where some people were like, just don't engage with either of them until it blows over. And some people reached out to me and were just like, how can I support you? And some people kind of ghosted. And I remember really having a very hard time with the people who kind of ghosted or didn't check in. And I remember feeling somewhat betrayed. And, in retrospect, I realized, through my healing process, I was just like, they just didn't quite know what to do, or we weren't as close, or, they just wanted to give me space. And so over time, I've learned that it's just a lot more digestible. It happens over time. But the value that I had in that was recognizing who cared so much to reach out and check in, a lot. And so I think there's a gift in that, where it's a group of like 100+ people, our particular community. You know what I mean? No one's gonna be best friends, but it's great to know as you're healing, because it takes a lot of energy, who you do spend your energy on and just spend more time with, and then you just focus on them. And then when you do bigger things, you invite everyone else.
Yeah, makes sense. And how have you noticed it be different in like monogamy versus non-monogamy? Anything different than what I said?
It's pretty similar, I think, because I mean, I only experienced one breakup. I was with somebody for 6 years, and I had some friendships, but not too many. But the friendships that I went into it were mine, and then the ones that he had were his. So it's easier to like not kind of have to stress about that. And then with the lifestyle relationship, it was like majority people fine with both. You know what I mean? Like I think he's a very fun, engaging person. Like that's why I fell in love with him in the first place. You know what I mean? So I think it's normal for people to still be his friend. I just didn't have the safety in it from a relationship standpoint. And so like over time reconciling that made it a lot easier for that kind of separation. Yeah. But yeah, this friendship, this community is unlike any friendship I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Like, we are so different. So close. We are seen for all of our weirdness, all of our quirkiness, and what I wish I had growing up. And so it's such a deep level of connection that I have, which is why it feels so devastating when puzzle pieces are moving around. And, you know, there's like quite a significant amount of breakups happening in the group right now. You know, and I feel like what I've witnessed is I love the community being more real, you know, and I think people talking about the challenges of breakups and people talking about, oh, I this was hard, that was hard, that it's kind of normalized it in a way that I don't think happens in monogamous relationships. So I don't think friends have the comfortability to hold space for you and simultaneously call you out in the same way that you would in lifestyle because you are in similar spaces. And I fully respect that. I think it's like an actual layer of strength and emotional intelligence that it requires to do that. Yeah. And we're very lucky, you know, to have that. I agree.
And
doesn't feel like it in this moment.
It's an experience that you have to be exponentially growing, rapid rate. I'm wondering, do you have any tips after going through a really rough one? What are your biggest tips to going through a breakup in the lifestyle community?
I'm still learning. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think something that has come up a lot because of a lot of these recent breakups is how to engage with the other person, how to not engage or not engage with the other person in this community. You know what I mean? I have a personal rule where I give whether I'm close with them or not. For me personally, it's just like I try to give at least 2-3 month breathing room for a healing process, and then I would just communicate. Depending on my closeness to that person, I think I would communicate like, hey, like, how are you feeling? Temperature check, like, you know, how would you feel if I engaged with this person at an event, you know, and just give them the opportunity to be honest and then kind of go from there. If it was a close friend, obviously I would take that absolutely, you know, seriously. And then if it wasn't as much, be like, hey, heads up, like it could even post like, hey, we happen to play at this party or something like that. And there's still such gray area, you know, where but I tend to over communicate, I would say. Like I think coming from the BDSM world is like, that was such a strong thing. Like sharing partners wasn't necessarily serious. And there's like the dynamics where it's like, sometimes you would only talk with like the dom or the sub, or like you would have, like, there were so many rules. So I ask a lot of questions, but I think personally, just what I said earlier, being mindful of, I care more about the friendships than I do about the play. It kind of just, you know, I'd rather take space and maybe play with the 99 other people or 98 other people instead of those two and kind of go from there. But for you, like, how would you want people to communicate with you when it goes down? If they play with your previous partner, or would you not? Or would it depend on how close?
I definitely wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to know. So I wasn't really talking about playing, but just like tips. Yeah. But I mean, I would like to know, I'll answer this after, but what would what should be the rules around playing with your friend's ex? So you asked me, like, if I want to know. No, I don't want to know. But if they're like my best, closest friends, that's a little bit different story.
So the question is, how would I handle playing with somebody else's ex?
What do you think the rules should be around playing with someone else's ex when they're going through a breakup?
I think the rules depend on the person. For me personally, whichever one I'm closer with, that would be I would just ask them.
You ask them. Yeah. And
because I feel like I'd rather even if it hurts them, which it might, depending on how fresh it is or how devastating it is, it might hurt that even the thought of it, they're just like, oh, you know, but at least they would know that I had the respect to ask instead of afterwards you finding out and then feeling betrayed.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with that. I think ask, especially if you're really close to us.
Yeah.
So for me, we both had 2 people off limits. And for me, it was like my 2, I thought were my closest friends.
Yeah.
And so that was communicated to him. And then I thought I communicated it to both people, but I actually didn't. I thought I did. And so that was a bad on my part. I wish I would have communicated to both. And
also, and this isn't required, but I would hope that both parties understand who your closest people were and just be mindful to not, again, hundreds of people in this chat where you can engage and play with, you know, let's not be lying for the people that your ex-partner was close to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I think is like, I want to have my girlfriend that I talk to the most and we shared experience and I want to be able to talk to her and vent and have that communication without her fucking my ex tomorrow. Yeah. So I think, you know, and I only needed really 2 and everybody else, I'm like, I don't really want to hear about it.
Yeah.
They can do what they want. They're not on the list for a reason because I feel comfortable or we're not as close, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to hear about it. I'd rather out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
What about for you? Like,
so interesting. You're more of like a don't ask, don't tell. I guess mine is sort of similar, but it's similar point. Like if it was people who I was close with, it'd be nice to know. I wouldn't make it mandatory, but it would be nice to know. And I think if it did happen, it just helps me sort of mentally readjust. I'm just like, okay, like their priorities aren't necessarily the same as mine. It just helps give me a bit more awareness. But I've actually never had to necessarily deal with that. I've had a lot of people ask me if that was okay, even almost a year after, right? Because he wasn't particularly in the picture for a while. But when he'd be back and forth, people would ask me, they're like, hey, I just wanted to check in. Is it okay? Like, wasn't even expecting that. Like, they do not owe me that by any means. But even just that ask, even from people where I feel like they didn't have to, meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, had I found out afterwards that they did, wouldn't have been a big deal. You know what I mean? Enough time has passed for me to heal. But having that mindfulness and that respect makes me feel considered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling considered, I would say, is the biggest thing that has been the hardest, is just not feeling considered or cared for. And so, shifting, growing. You guys will be able to listen to my journey. This is a lower point. So let's see as things change. And before we end the episode, I'd love to hear, you helped get Lovely Fate in Playboy, and it was one of the first published episodes in 6 years? How did you do that? And that's awesome. Congrats to you.
Thank you. No, it was an amazing opportunity to be a part of it. And so the way it had come about was we had a writer reach out to us at Lovely Fate from like a random Gmail account who was just like, hey, Playboy is coming back into print.
Yeah.
And we're doing a big splash, and we kind of want to write about general experiences and lifestyle in LA, or like, what does the sex party in LA look like?
Yeah.
Right. And so I remember the leadership team was a little bit apprehensive over like the legitimacy of it. And for a
they
very
could like
good
turn
reason.
It to be bad and like portray it in a terrible way. Of course.
Yeah. Cause there was a club on the East Coast where that had happened to, where it sort of went in, they were like, yes, no, everything's fine. And then one person had a bad experience and the entire article revolved around that and lack of safety. And so we were on edge and so, but I was like, this can be an amazing opportunity. So I really fought with the partners to really push and say, I said, give me a week or two. Let me verify the legitimacy of this writer. Let me, because if he is in fact exclusively writing for Playboy, and I can reach the team at Playboy to verify that it will in fact only be in Playboy, then like them coming back with a big splash, and being a sex positive magazine, I don't see why they would do a negative spin on it.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to some of my PR contacts, and I even put on Instagram, I was like, if anybody knows anyone at Playboy, I need to get something verified. And so many people connected me with the person, like connecting me an email. So like by the time the editor-in-chief had, finally like gotten a phone call with me, he was like, I'm kind of impressed that like I've heard about this already from so many people.
Wow.
Yes, in fact, we have hired him to write this article. It is only going in Playboy. And so from there, I was like, great, reached out to the writer. I was like, let's do this.
I love that.
Yeah. It started out as such a blanket because he was doing all the other parties in LA, but he had heard about Lovely Fate so much from so many people. And I wasn't expecting Lovely Fate to be such a cornerstone in the article. I thought it was just going to be like a little part of it. And so I was just absolutely so excited with the experience that he had as a writer in this space and the way everyone talked about it to make that such a prominent part of the piece. And I am so happy.
Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you.
She's in it. Go get one of them. That's amazing. Great job for you. Also great job for doing your due diligence and like making sure that didn't happen. That's super smart.
It can be, I feel like while times are changing, I mean, it being a sex party being written about in Playboy is like a massive start. These podcasts, these conversations is really reducing the stigma around it, but it's still a sensitive topic. And so I think we had to proceed with cautions because if it was positioned in a bad space, it's not representative of what we know our community to be. It's not until you've experienced it that you're like, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. People care about each other. They have their own lives. They're emotionally intelligent. They're successful in their career and also like to play. And I would love for this to be like the brave new world. And the more we talk about it, the more that other people feel comfortable reaching out, asking questions and getting more involved. And this becomes more normalized.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for leading. And that's amazing. Changing the conversation from being taboo to maybe just being normalized. Sex is normal. We can talk about it. It's a normal part of our human experience, all the things. So is there anything else you'd love to share? I do have one last question is what's your biggest tip to feel sexy, magnetic, confident, even when you're not really feeling it?
Ooh, I would say that's so interesting because I had something in mind until that last part, right? Where it's just like, I think even like putting on lingerie, putting on makeup and getting in that vibe and having people message me saying that they're excited for the party because most of them I produce, that already gets me in the mood. However, that last part that you said, even when you're not, when I'm not, I don't force it. When I'm not, it kind of just like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm in the vibe. I'm very social. I just switch from like whatever energy I'm in to just being extroverted. And if people are like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm just like a little overwhelmed right now. Like I vocalize it. I do not put a mask anymore because that was devastating for me in my last relationship and situation. And that was, so much of that was my accountability. Like I put on a mask. And if you're not feeling okay, that is okay. It is okay to communicate that. If you still want to show up, have a good time. If you want to bail out and back out when you're not feeling 100%, do so. That is also okay.
Oh, yeah. I love that answer. Yes, that was great. This is also something I've been learning. And one of the play parties I went to right after we broke up, it was the first one. And I was tender.
Yes.
And I can't, what was it? There was one thing. Oh, I remember. There was one thing that triggered me. It was at a location at an event that we had an issue and a boundary pass and like things. And I went in the same space and the vision came back to me mid-dance.
Oh.
And so I was like dancing, hanging out with my friends. And then it hit like a wave, like a ton of bricks. And I like had to leave the room. And I think it like took over my expression and I was like, I have to go. And so like, I actually happened to have my friend there and I was like, she's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And then she was like, do you need anything? I was like, well, could you come with me? And so we went and like hid behind this like screen and like cried.
Kudos to you for being able to ask for help. That's something that I don't see very often where they'll just like, if you need to bail on your own, that's fine. But to be able to ask for support is incredibly rare. And I hope people feel safe to do that. But I had that too all the time, sometimes randomly. My Actually, it might have been my first or second play party afterwards. I think it was the first, and he wasn't even there. But I remember everyone knew it was going to be hard, and they were super, super nice to me. And ironically, that was also overwhelming.
Yes.
I snuck into the mandala room that no one goes into in a corner because it's really dark, and I just cried for a bit, and I just kind of let it out because I was like, okay, like just enjoy yourself and
let it out.
Yeah, that is
feel it.
Fucking normal.
And then it passed, and I kind of was just more. I just kind of hung out at that party. Yeah. I just kind of like talked to friends, shared things. I went through a little bit of a reaction, which we will share on a different podcast. It's a little too long of a story, but I will tell you that this past relationship, that was one thing that I learned most. Yeah, was that I had a really hard time asking for help. I had a hard time sharing my feelings. I would always go away to figure it out on my own, and that was one of the biggest lessons I learned. Was to ask for help. I have to ask. They can't read my mind. Yes. And to be vulnerable and share and emotional and figure out things together versus leaving, figuring out on my own, and then having them deal with it.
Them being the friend who you lean on, or
anything. It could be friends. It could be a relationship. Yeah. Where like something's going wrong. So I would figure it out and then, oh, this is what's happening. Yeah. But then I realized, I have to I'm in a relationship. We got to deal with this together. We got to talk it through. We can find a solution together. So those were some biggest lessons.
If that's something that works for you, for sure. Yeah. And I say that with a caveat because I'm a delayed processor. And so sometimes I do need that moment on my own to breathe and think my thoughts through. Otherwise I end up in just circles of conversation. I'm I don't know what the point is. I like to sort of go through it, be like, okay, what is it? Oh, this is what it is. Here's what I'm communicating.
And then maybe come with a solution together.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Any last words? Where can they find you? And I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. You've been a great guest.
And you've been so vulnerable. So thank you so much for having me. And I love that we're able to talk about so many of these things. But yeah, you can find me everywhere. So for my experiences and stuff, it's the Frisky Flirt. On Instagram. My personal is Vanessa Duffy, sort of my wild child adventures and experiences, travels, motorcycle riding Yoshi. Lovely Fate. Check that out online. It's lovely.fate on Instagram. Come to one of the parties, experience what we're talking about. I love building community. And then Kinky Comedy Show is also an event that I co-produce where we get a lot of lifestyle people together to meet and greet in a non-play setting, so it doesn't feel as stressful. So if you want to meet people without nervous and feel like you're not ready, might not be ready for a play party, come to one of the Kinky Comedy shows.
Yes, check it out, and thank you.